Listen, while we're letting everybody in, we're gonna do two parts here. I'm gonna do a real quick update on a couple of the regulatory processes going on that affect coastal Virginia. We're also going to ask that people sort of, you can in the chat, as Danielle has, indicate who you are and what you're up to as a way of introducing yourself to the rest of the group, because we're not going to do formal interviews because formal introductions because there's so many of you. And I'm going to give a quick overview and then turn it over to Ann Phillips, who's going to bring you up to speed on what the state is doing. We're going to have, we're going to be using the chat box for some references as well. There'll be some URLs, links, whatever, put up in there. One of the other things that we want you to do is there's a poll going on now about whether we've started a monthly Commonwealth Resilience Brief in which we're trying to keep people up to speed as it develops, and it's going to get real fast in the next couple of months as these actions emerge. And so we're trying to do a monthly, if not more frequent, update on issues. So if you want to receive it, take our poll right now and indicate you want to receive it, and we'll get you your copy. Look at this. Everybody, nearly everyone is up to speed on Zoom etiquette, muting while you're not talking. I guess this is getting to be somewhere between rote and routine for everybody. So have we got everybody? Just about everybody voted, right, MC?
So I actually can't see it, but I'm just going to keep it up for a little bit while you're talking. So don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I think I'm through talking because I don't like to hear myself talk, nor do I like to look at myself on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just a quick presentation on some of the things going on. Let me get rid of this. There we go. All right. So just a quick update on some of the things that that are going on. One of the things that went on September 16th was this. We of course had a fall of a lot of wind-driven and moon-pulled tides. So this was Colonial Place in Norfolk. So as you all recall, some of you were on one of our earlier chats, a number of changes in the legislature in the last session that are going to drive a lot of change in the way the state deals with coastal issues. One of the big changes, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act was amended, and coastal resilience and adaptation to sea level rise and climate change were added as a purpose of the act. The Department of Environmental Quality under Justin Williams is looking at how to implement this. There was a webinar on October 29th. There's a link for it there. I'll put it in the chat, that went over the regulations, went over the issues that were involved. The next step on this is that Justin and the staff at DEQ are drafting some regulations that will go to the Water Quality Control Board in December. I think their meeting is December 10th. There will be a 60-day public comment period, and then modifications to the regs if needed, and then resubmission and final action by the board in their spring meeting. At the same time, Virginia Coastal Policy Center and VIMS have gotten a NOAA project of special merit to develop the guidelines for this new regulation. And they'll be doing that concurrently with the comment period on the regulations. So by the spring, we should have regulations and guidelines that will attempt to figure out how a locality in administering the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act is going to include coastal resilience and adaptation to sea level rise and climate change. And as I said, we'll be coming back out again, probably right after the December water board meeting with some additional updates through that Commonwealth resilience brief. So hook up with that and we'll try to keep you informed. The other piece of this, there was some major changes done in a bill patroned by Senator Lewis. And essentially two pieces of change there. One is that living shorelines are to become the default approach for shoreline erosion control unless the best available science indicates it will not work. And the second piece of this was, as with the Chesapeake Bay Act, we're going to include sea level rise and coastal hazards. We're basically including climate change into the guidance and standards for the tidal wetlands law. And this is moving ahead in a little less predictable way because of staff changes at VMRC. But VMRC did hold 3 webinars on these topics. Randy Owen at VMRC is the lead staff on this. They expect to have the winter VMRC meeting consider the guidelines for this, for the living shorelines piece of this. And then those guidelines will go out for public review and comment before they're finally adopted. The other piece of this, which is the inclusion of sea level rise and the tidal wetlands guidelines and standards, is probably not coming out anytime soon, simply because of the staffing limitations at VMRC. Now, one of our big pushes has been to have both the wetlands changes and the CBPA changes taking place at the same time, so that localities are not, on the same piece of shoreline dealing with widely divergent regulations. But I'm not sure that that's actually going to happen, at least not in the short run. I think it will eventually, but anyway, I think the coordination between these two actions is probably not something that's going to be happening anytime soon. So with that quick update, what I'd like to do is turn things over to Ann Phillips, and Admiral Phillips will provide us with an update or a review update on the coastal master planning framework that was released here in Norfolk a couple of weeks ago. So am I in charge of this, MC? How do I get Ann Phillips to be the lead here?
She has the ability to share her
All right, there she is. Yeah, she's good. Okay. So Ann, you're up and you have the ability to share screen. So take it from here.
Okay, Skip, good afternoon. I think I've gone to slideshow mode. Yes, I have. So good afternoon, everyone. I've enjoyed looking at the attendance list. A lot of us were on a similar call with HR, well, not a similar call, but a call on the same topic this morning with HRPDC. Some of you have been a part of a previous presentation very similar to this one, that was given to the planning district directors several weeks ago now, the 8 coastal planning district directors. And I even see neighbors and some colleagues I haven't seen for quite some time. So good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to talk about the Virginia Coastal Resilience Master Planning Framework, which was released October 22nd in Norfolk, actually, right at the Lavalette fishing area. And I think at some point we'll be able to post the link to the press release and the document itself if you haven't had a chance to look at it, as well as some additional companion work that was done for us by the Commonwealth Center for Current Flooding Resilience, George McLeod, Emily Steinhuber, and Tom Allen, looking at nuisance flooding overlays for coastal Virginia and overlaying that over top of sea level rise, and then also doing some work there with kind of mid-level storm work there. So we'll get to that as we work through this. I'd also like to thank Skip Stiles and the Wetlands Watch staff for allowing me to speak with you all this afternoon, and to introduce my current Sea Grant Fellow, who is on the call as well. Cherie Zhang will be joining me for the next year. She's already come on board, and some of you may remember her because she was a summer Sea Grant Fellow working with us last summer in the Office of the Governor. My faithful Sea Grant, first ever year-long Sea Grant Fellow, Ben Nettleton, has moved on to VMRC. So for those of you who know Ben, please congratulate him. He started with VMRC this week and is going to relocate to the Hampton Roads area so that he can continue his work with them. So I know Skip just gave you a quick update on some of the legislative actions that took place in the last General Assembly session, 2020 General Assembly. I'll call your attention to a few more. House Bill 1313, first place the Chief Resilience Officer appears in state code now, adds some authorities in that regard, adds authorities to my position, the Special Assistant for Coastal Adaptation and Protection, and then expands DCR's flood protection program, stakeholder coordination and authorities. And I hope that we are able to take more use of that, those provisions as we work into this coming year. You know, we are joining RGGI effective January 1st, 2021. What that means is that we will begin to participate in regional greenhouse gas auctions, and about Virginia's share is about 27 million credits over the course of a year. A quarter will be auctioned off at a time. First auction late March. 50% of that money goes into a DHCD managed energy efficiency fund. 45% goes into a DCR managed Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund, which is a statewide fund. I know many of you are very much aware of this. 3% to DEQ to help manage RGGI, and 2% to DHCD to help manage their portion of the monies. And DCR may work with the Virginia Resources Authority to also provide for specific staff to support the administration of their portion of the fund. We expect the auction will generate, kind of unclear what the cost will be, but the last auction in September, the shares went for $6.83 a share. More shares on the market will probably decrease the price some, so we're just not quite clear what they'll go for, but a quarter of our 27 million will be auctioned off, and we think we'll see for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund somewhere around 12 million, which will show up within a few days. The money comes into DEQ and then is dispersed to the funds. And again, DCR's money will be held by Virginia Resources Authority, held and managed. So initial principles and guidelines are now in draft, and there will soon be a notice of when they will be released for public comment. So that's coming, because I know many of you have asked in other forums when that will take place. It's been a tedious process, but we are making progress, so that's good. We talked about 504 and 776. The thing at the bottom I'd like to bring your attention to is there was in the 2020 General Assembly funding, which remained in the budget for a JCOTS effort to study weather impact on coastal areas and the economic consequences of weather-related events on coastal areas. Kind of an interesting way of saying sea level rise. And that study is co-chaired by the Virginia Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. It has started. It's actually got going later this summer. And the initial language said they were to have a report for this coming General Assembly. That is not now required because of the challenges with the multiple sessions. But that work has begun and is ongoing, and it's an excellent group of participants. You can look up who they are online through the JCOTS website, and some of you on the call are participants, so that's good. You know this is actually happening. So this is a separate and isolated effort. It is not affiliated with the Community Flood Preparedness Fund or with the Master Plan Framework. It will make recommendations in an independent way, and of course there are some people who are parts of both, but several people had asked me whether this actually was going to be a thing and whether it actually would take place, and it is in fact moving along. So guiding principles, those of you who have seen me talk about what we are trying to move towards in creating a master plan for the Commonwealth for coastal adaptation and protection have seen these 5 categories in large part already. First, climate change is real, it's happening. We're not going backwards. And so we need to base decision-making on the best available science and with projected, scientifically valid projected information as much as we can. That's a challenge for agencies. It's a challenge for localities, but our future will be different than our past. We just have to accept that and begin to move on and prepare accordingly. Tremendous focus on enhancing and expanding and ensuring, I think I would say, equity across socioeconomic strata across the Commonwealth through coastal Virginia. We certainly have a circumstance where localities have capacity, planning districts have capacity, and they can make progress, and those that have less capacity can make less progress. And so it's one of the things we would try to target opportunities within the Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund to mitigate statewide. And certainly the Coastal Zone Management Program has entered into has a grant working with the 8 coastal planning districts where they're going to put $720,000 over the next 3 years into each of the 8, so helping them support additional planning capacity to deal with coastal resilience and coastal resilience planning. But there's a need there, and there'll continue to be needs. And there's not only a need at the regional level, there'll be needs at more local levels as well. So as you can imagine, equity is a big piece of this. Natural and nature-based solutions as a first line of defense. They will not be the only solution. We will have to have gray infrastructure. We will have to have green infrastructure. But we would certainly want to incorporate as much of nature-based solutions and best management practices as we possibly can. And of course, this is where we have opportunities to pull together the water quality and the water quantity world to the greatest positive effect. Using a region-specific approach, and you'll see that when you look at the framework that we've kind of focused on, dividing the coast into 4 chunks, but realizing that what one community and locality and regions needs are very different than others, and so the outcomes will have to be tailored to their needs. And finally, figuring out how to best fund the significant and substantial tasks that are ahead of us. There will be things that we can't afford, and we're going to have to come up with the most cost-effective solutions over time. You all are dealing with that in your localities, and it's really no different at the state level. And it's pulling together what capacity the state has, getting the state to think more broadly about what it should be considering over time, and then just trying to align the existing processes. Are we taking the best advantage of existing federal grant programs? Are we aligning them and targeting specific approaches and specific regions, perhaps for assistance? And the answer there is no, we're not. And so how do we best do that? And how do we take advantage of those opportunities that are there that certainly some localities are able to use with great success and others less so? The primary goals of the framework, again, many of you are quite aware of this, are over the next year to identify and prioritize those projects that are already ready to go, and or at least in a planning process and approved by a locality or a political subdivision of the Commonwealth. Figure out how to prioritize where we should be focusing our attention, establish ways that we can best begin to start to finance some of these strategies. Lots of work to be done there. I don't mean to minimize how difficult that's going to be, or how technically difficult is going to be, challenging it's going to be. Ensuring that we're incorporating climate change projections across state programs. This is a challenge, as those of you who have been involved in the EO45 working group are well aware. But I think the agencies are starting to turn the corner. They're beginning to realize this is in their future, but they're all in different places. So pulling people together is part of the challenge, and then coordinating efforts, of course, across federal, state, local, and regional entities so that we can move forward with a set of common goals. I spoke briefly about breaking the coast into 4 kind of master planning regions. Hampton Roads is by itself as kind of an entity, but what we tried to do was capitalize on the regions that had similar needs and challenges. Riverine, coastline, stream flooding, rural coastal planning districts already have authorities in place that join them together. Richmond and Plan RVA and the Crater Planning District often already share hazard mitigation plan strategies and other efforts. So any place that were kind of natural alignments already. We try to take advantage of those, and we think this will help us with a planning strategy over time to be able to kind of focus based on regional needs. We'll see if that is acceptable. Maybe we'll realize we need to change it over time, but as an entering argument, this is what we've started with. Next steps. So we talked about the Reggie auction and the timing there already. The framework designates 3 significant actions. It establishes a technical advisory committee and names initial members of that committee. Those committee members have been named, they have accepted, many of them have appointed additional either +1s or alternates for their presence. In addition, we have asked other members, which we may do, to participate to give us a little more technical expertise in some areas. And we are nearly to the point of, for those, some of you on this call are on the technical advisory committee. And so today you got to save the date. We're looking at the 14th of December as our first meeting. That will be formally announced in the coming weeks or so, but just so people can hold it on their calendars. So that process is moving forward. This will help us begin to the work of identifying priorities, understanding gaps, aligning a project selection process, and then putting that to the test to formally establish a first cut at a actual master plan by the end of 2021. So the Technical Advisory Committee has been established. For those who have read the framework, you know that we are changing the alignment of the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program so that for matters related to coastal adaptation and protection, they report directly to the Secretary of Natural Resources. That has been designated by Executive Directive 13, which is now publicly available on the state's website, as is the Executive Order 71, which formally establishes the Technical Advisory Committee. So those 2 documents are completed. They've been publicly posted. The last thing that we are working on is a preliminary outreach plan and strategy. This is a very nascent effort that needs to grow into a larger, more long-term, substantial, consistent process, which other states have done. And I usually use Louisiana as the model. Interestingly, that is largely based in a collaboration of nonprofit entities who have come together to work, with the state's planning process, with communities and localities, and bring those 2 together as a conduit to pass information up and down. It's taken some time for them to develop this, but it seems to be functional. So that's a model, and we're in the earliest stages of sorting out how we might do that here in the Commonwealth. And of course, conversations like this are a piece of that. So supported by the Reggie money, we are also nearly finished with a request for proposals for technical services to help us do this work, professional technical services. We've kind of started on one path, almost ready a month ago, decided we needed to go another way. Been back through this second iteration. I think we're in a much better place. And so that should be coming also. I know some of you are aware of this. I've had people call me about it. Of course, once the RFP is on the street, no more talking. But and I will also say this, to properly evaluate what we are asking for. And I had help to do this. I didn't sit there and do it myself. I reached out to the city of Virginia Beach and to CCRFR, both of whom helped me put this together. We looked at the Texas work, we looked at Louisiana's work, and we looked at what Virginia needs, and we put together a strategy based on that. And think we're kind of on the right track there. I know people have said, well, we're not quite ready. We might have to make some changes. Yes, that's true. We might have to make some changes, but we now have the momentum with a funding potential to be able to move forward. And I don't want to say potential, we will get money. So let's get moving here, and we will be able to adapt over time as we need to, much as many of you who are part of localities who have already done your own coastal research know. So we're moving forward with that, and coming soon to a posting near you. And lastly, also designated in the framework is an interest in creating a coastal relocation handbook for the Commonwealth. So this does not mean that we will be telling people they must relocate and where they will relocate to. It means if you want to think about this in your future, these are things that you should think about based on the Commonwealth's law, regulation, policy, etc. So that's a lot to do in a year. And in the meeting with the planning district directors, they were very, very vocal about the amount of work that the framework calls out, the number of things that involve them or others, in addition to things they're already doing, and also the sort of challenging sense of alignment on this project versus what's going on with the coastal zone management process. And so the best way I would describe that is we will do what we can, supported by the technical services that we're going to procure to help us to secure the best possible project and outcome, researched, evaluated, and managed, and knowing that there will be more work to do. Other states that have done this work have Texas did one plan, had a hurricane, did another plan within 2 years. Louisiana started off small and then expanded over time and did several iterations, and now they're kind of finally on a path where they're doing every 4 to 5 years, which is our goal, that we'd be doing something like every 5 years. So the process here basically is Technical Advisory Committee is reviewing and helping to prioritize. Outreach is providing feedback. The Coastal Zone Management Program is helping staff this effort and also oversee and provide guidance based on their considerable experience and their support from NOAA, and that this will be a document that will be iterated over time. And through all of this, the objective is to try to prioritize and take best advantage of federal dollars where we can, and align state and local processes where we can. So I talked about these already in the context of immediate actions. Technical Advisory Committee is moving along. The Coastal Zone Management Program realignment is out through executive directive, and we're building our outreach and community engagement strategy. I'm going to go on mute so I can I go on mute? Yes. Water drinking time. Sorry. Thank you for your tolerance of that. Okay, next slide here, if I can get there. There we go. I mentioned earlier that CCRFR had done some work to assist us, particularly looking at nuisance flooding. I talked to George McLeod last summer, and we sort of discussing what could we do. And I said, well, we really don't understand what's happening with nuisance flooding. We don't have any really way to show it. And, could we do something there? And so working with NOAA, CCRFR was able to pull up some new data that had just been done, just been actually analyzed adequately, that broke nuisance flooding down from just a number to by region and area, give us a little more fidelity and what was actually going on. So working with NOAA, with Billy Sweet, George was able to map this and show it in this product. And I think we have posted, or we will post the link that's also shown here in the chat so you can see it. But this has been done for all of coastal Virginia. Not only does it show the impact of nuisance flooding using the NOAA 2017 intermediate high projections, it shows them with the impact of sea level rise, adding nuisance flooding, and then adding a moderate flood event, which is described as a Cat 1 storm or a nor'easter on top of that. We also looked at the number of impacted structures, where you would see street inundation, and is able to show that as well. So it's a pretty interesting piece of work to look at. We hope that it will add value and can be built upon and or added to other work that's been done to help localities and regions get a better understanding of what's coming in their future, particularly in regards to nuisance flooding. So I picked this part of the Lafayette River because I row and I'm on it all the time. And so I get the bird's eye view. And since I live here too, I'm pretty familiar with what's actually happening. And this is what's actually happening. So red is sea level rise impact, gold is the nuisance flood, yellow is a minor or higher Cat 1 or so storm flood event. And then the sea level rise is dark blue, moderate flooding, or tidal nuisance flooding is a lighter blue, and then moderate flooding is kind of a green, which would be in addition to the nuisance flooding. So we know this is a part of our future, having to deal with this continual and building challenge. Not a storm, not a hurricane, but something that definitely impacts localities, planning, maintenance, transportation, infrastructure, and a host of other things. So we hope that adds some value. And it is accompanied by a paper that can be found at floodingresiliency.org, which is CCRFR's website, and describes, what's in the report, what's not in the report, and what should be done next. So I think it's good work and worth building on. And if you have an opportunity to take a look at it, please do. Lastly, I have some questions for you in the context of outreach and trying to gain more insight and access from people on the ground dealing with flooding routinely. Submit these questions for your interest, and if you would like to reply to me either personally, that's fine. And we also have established a website, which is down here at the bottom, or actually an email through resilientcoastva@governor.virginia.gov. Also, SNR has a resilience page. Secretary of Natural Resources has a resilience page. That page is somewhat under construction at the moment. It's being reorganized, and some of the links have to be corrected. And we've worked on it. We thought we had it right, and it's not right. So if you look there and say, hey, the link to the framework doesn't work, yes, you're right. We know. It's a multi-step process to change that in the Office of the Governor. So it takes a little time, but at any rate, you may reach us at Resilient Coast VA, governor.virginia.gov, and people have, and we'll answer your questions and get back to you, and appreciate your comments. So I think I'm not going to read these because you can read, but I'm happy to hear comments and answer questions. And I think the last slide is again the public comment email access. And that's it. Thank you very much. Skip, I'll get out of this. Do you want me to stop sharing? Thanks.
All right, there we go. So we're open for questions. You can either put them in the chat or unmute yourself. I think everybody's able. Yeah, nobody's. We haven't muted everyone, have we? So if you have
muted
any questions,
a couple troublemakers, but they can unmute themselves.
oh, you muted a couple troublemakers. Oh, and I know who they are too.
Just two.
So if anyone has any questions about the master planning framework or anything resilient at the governor's level, either throw it in the chat or chime in. I think I had one question. The timing on this master planning contract that's going to be let. The RFP goes out shortly. Is that correct for the contract?
Yes.
And the delivery date on that would be prior to the end of next year sometime? When is the expected delivery on that?
Yes. Yep. Prior to the end of next year. So it's a short, as has been pointed out by many, very short turnaround.
Okay. And it is to guide, or that document will help guide the prioritization of projects, but at the same time, we're going to be having projects in the interim. So we're sort of going to be over the next year aligning the timing on a lot of these things. Is that correct? The TAC will be setting the priority process, but the master plan with the sort of overall priority strategy, whatever you want to call it, won't be out till the end of the year.
Yes. I think it helps that the framework is now out. When we were originally trying to put together the finer details through the contracting process related to the RFP, the framework wasn't out. And so we were trying to describe, what was going to be in it without having it. And now that it's there, it's a source for the kinds of things that we're focused on trying to accomplish. The biggest thing, though, goes back to the pilot project that we did here from 2014 to 2016. What's critical? What's vulnerable? What do we have a strategy for now? And where do we have gaps? And it just comes down to that. And we have not looked at the entire coast in that context. And back to my point that everybody's idea of critical and vulnerable and gaps will be different, but we haven't, as a Commonwealth, looked at this holistically, and we need help to do it. We cannot do it ourselves. And I thought to myself as I was listening to Ben McFarland's meeting this morning, wow, there are not many people at the Commonwealth level who could have that kind of a conversation on that specific issue. So we need help to do it. And we also aren't going to do that in a vacuum without working with the planning districts, working with the localities who have already done this work. So it's not outside of that, it is including that and moving forward with it.
So the next couple 3 months then are going to be pretty crazy in terms of activity on this issue. It sounds like
Yes,
because the TAC's going to be meeting in early December. The item I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the State Water Control Board is going to be meeting on the proposed CVPA regs in early December. The contract's going to go out. I guess at some point we're going to see the sort of guidelines, the initial draft guidelines for the funds. So I guess we're all going to have to keep on our toes for the next couple of months to stay abreast of this.
yes. I see John Bateman's question on the process to build out the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. So John, the first step is draft principles and guidelines, which we have, and then getting those out for public comment. They include actually questions for the public comment period to, for specific areas that we feel that we need additional feedback on. And then once that process moves forward and, for more information, I need DCR to give me a list, which they probably have, and I just don't have it with me at this moment in time, on how long each step of that process then lasts, so that I know the initial public comment, I believe, is 60 days. So the intent is that we're ready to go with at least an initial strategy by the time the first auction is held. And I can say that DHCD is on a similar timeline. So that when the first auction is held, they have worked their way through their development of their principles and guidelines and have worked through their public comment period and are at least in a preliminary way ready to go once they see what they receive for funds.
Any other questions out there?
Just in case someone's writing a question, we did have some people wondering about how to access a lot of the links that were included in the presentation. And so possibly a nice way to address this would be for us to send the recording of the presentation in addition to a list of links referenced in a follow-up email, so that people might be able to
go straight to it.
Yeah.
Although it looks like you put most of them in the chat.
Yes, or I could just make the chat available, to everybody. So either way, we can make the links available to people.
That would be very helpful.
And as I said, in addition, we're going to be pumping out this Commonwealth Resilience Brief probably with each major event that takes place. So sign up for that, and we'll be putting a lot of this information along with these background links in that document as well. Again, this is more than any sort of normal human being can keep up with for the next couple of months. So we're going to try to step in and provide as much information as we can.
Oh, sorry. We didn't really offer an opportunity for people to ask questions about the initial presentation that you made, Skip. about some of the other programs, the CBPA, the Tidal Wetlands
Yeah.
Act. So if anybody has questions about how those regulatory statutory processes are going, please ask it.
Well, and Denise Nelson has a question about when the State Water Quality Control Board meeting is. It is a December meeting, but it's not been, I don't think that the agenda has been posted yet, but I'm told it will be the December meeting because they do want to try to turn this around and get it finally approved at the spring Water Quality Control Board meeting. We'll get that info out as soon as we've got the exact time on it, but it is that December meeting they're looking at. That's, I think, is December 10th. There was a meeting. We'll get that information out.
I thought it was the 9th. That's what I'm looking up. But if it's not in town hall, then it's not.
Yeah, I know town hall.
Well, it's not the 9th because that's a Saturday. So. Yeah.
It's not the 10th because that's a Sunday. 11th. That's what I heard. 11th. Yes. Anyway, we'll get that information out.
Oh no. Wait. Maybe I was on the wrong month. Sorry.
All right. So it's a great time. It's a great time.
I think it's the 9th. Yeah.
Okay. It's a great time to be in it's a great time to be in local government. You all are going to solve the sea level rise problem for the state
Right.
over the next year. Thank you so much. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, Dave in Burgess says, yes, let's do it. Okay, Dave, you can do it. If there are no other questions, we'll cut this off. Also, if you all have requests for speakers that you would want at a coming lunch and learn, we can try and see if we can corral somebody to speak to you. It may be that as these processes unfold that we could, maybe get the likes of Justin Williams to appear or somebody like that. So let us know. But anyway, thank you very much for taking some time out of your Friday to stop in. And thank you very much, Ann, for taking time out to help bring us up to date on where the state stands with this stuff.
Thank you, Skip. Happy to be here. Thanks for everybody's time this afternoon.
Take care. Thank you very much.